What's up guys, Jabril here from Neo Vintage Gaming, and today we have a different kind of video for you guys. So basically what I wanted to do was, with all the quarantine and me and Steve unable to film videos together, we wanted to film videos separately. He's been doing gameplays, I have ones, here and there, but I was like, what if I kind of do like a collection video, but it's kind of long form and chill and relaxed, kind of like a podcast. So I would say treat it like that. So I'm gonna give you guys kind of a heads up, this is probably gonna be on the longer side, because what I wanted to do was go over a little bit of the hardware, and then we can get into the games in my collection and do like mini reviews on each one. So I'm gonna try to make sure this doesn't go like over an hour or so, but this is kind of a long form content, so I would say treat this like a podcast. Alright, so for you guys that don't know, I'll give you guys a little bit of background. So we're today going over the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES, a lot of people like to call it, released in '83 in Japan, '85 in the United States. Right here I got the top loader, which was a hardware revision that was released in '93, so yeah, that puts it kind of into the Super Nintendo era. So a lot of people don't know that this came out, but in my opinion, the vastly superior way to play NES games, but we'll get into that. So the NES is actually part of the second generation of home consoles. A lot of people think it's the first. The first would go into like the color TV games that Nintendo was dropping from I think like 77 to like the early 80s, and then 83 the NES came, and then they brought it to the States in 85. So it wasn't necessarily the first foray into the console market, but it was the first of like the full, what we know it to be today with the cartridges and then Mario and all that. So revolutionary console, my personal favorite Nintendo console. Probably have most games out of a single collection that I could think of for a Nintendo console. Maybe the handhelds, I have more like DS games. But yeah, I have a lot of NES games here, as you can see. Not compared to some people online, I know their collections are insane. Alright, so let's start with the hardware, and then we'll get into the games. And I'll include timestamps below into the different sections of the video if you are interested in a particular aspect of this video. So right here I have the NES top loader. Now if you could see, as a flap right here, and it goes into it. Came out in '93. A little bit rarer than the regular one. I wouldn't say it's like a super hot commodity, impossible to find, but you won't see them laying around as much as you see the normal VCR loading NES system. The cool thing about it is, yeah, that console games go straight right into the top like that, as opposed to going in like the VCR format of the original. Which obviously the spring mechanism breaks, and it's just a whole mess with that old one. So this one, NES top loaders are super resilient. So if you can see one out there in the marketplace, I'd say definitely pick it up. Of course, the NES controller. This one actually comes with what is known as the dog bone controller. I got that over there, but it's just a different format of the controller. But this is the one that we all know. And right here, I just got the NES Mini. A little decorative piece. If you don't know about that, that was released a couple years back, and it just has a couple pre-installed games on it. Really dope. Excited to have that. So that's pretty much the hardware. An amazing console. 8-bit processor, of course. And so let's just get into the games now. So what I'm gonna do, go one by one and give you guys my quick thoughts on it. Sometimes I'll probably have more to say about others than other ones, but yeah. So let's start with Athlean X. This is actually a newer addition to my collection. I picked it up online after seeing a video on YouTube about it. It's kind of like an action platformer with light RPG mechanics. Really like it. Amazing pixel art. Very like 80s anime style pixel art you'll see in it. Very big sprites on screen, so that's kind of like a weird aspect of it. But it's cool. You can like upgrade your magic and upgrade different aspects of like your combat abilities and stuff like that. Pretty brutally hard, and I think it takes a lot of cues from Castlevania personally. The way that you can use your secondary attack, the kind of UI of the game is very Castlevania like, hitting you into pits. A lot of the challenge is very similar to like Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden. So yeah, Athlean X. Alright, second game we got is Back to the Future. This is a game that I actually got the Video Games Monthly. I'm wearing their shirt today. They were nice enough to give me a shirt. Yeah, so I got this to them. This is kind of like an isometric, mobile, dodging enemies type game. I really don't like it. Love the movie, don't really like the game that much, but it's cool to have in the collection, so yeah. Back to the Future. one of my favorite NES games, definitely in my like top 5, even top 3 maybe, Batman on the NES. I think this game is based on the '89 movie. Fantastic. You kind of have like an action platformer, really dope, kind of like Ninja Gaiden-esque navigation, being able to attach to walls and jump off that, different items and abilities, and it's just excellent art in it. Really dark, ominous look to it. A very unique looking game. We have the classic baseball. Part of there's a couple different ones that they released on NES of different sports games. Actually got ice hockey back there too. It's part of Steve's collection. He has like 4 NES games that he brought here. But yeah, we're just going to do mine today. So yeah, baseball. You know, I have kind of an affinity for the sports titles on the NES. Are they the best? Did they age the best? Not necessarily. I think there's an argument that like some of the Super Nintendo and Genesis ones are a lot better, and some people even like the ones going further that point, like the PS2 titles. But I really have an affinity for NES era sports games, and there's something really fun about this. Very basic, you know, sports arcade sim, whatever you want to go. Really dope game. We have Blades of Steel. It's a Konami game. It's a hockey game. My personal favorite hockey game on the NES. I know there's like ice hockey and stuff like that. This is one that I personally like the most. Again, I'm not like a huge hockey fan, so I don't know too much about it, so I can't speak as to like how authentic it is. But again, how authentic are you gonna get on an NES game? But yeah, pretty excellent game. Really glad to have that. Now my personal favorite franchise on the NES. We have Castlevania, and I have all 3. Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, and Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. All 3 of these are action platformers, really challenging. My personal favorite's the 3rd one, of course. The kind of the branching narrative they tell there, the pixel art, everything about it is just fantastic. This trilogy, if you can ever find these in the wild, I say pick them up, especially in box too. They get a little bit pricey in box, but if you can find it, they're like excellent additions to the collection. Alright, the next one is a really interesting game, Captain Skyhawk. Also got it through Video Games Monthly. Cool thing about this is it actually has like a 3D art style for an NES game, which is absolutely incredible. It's one of the most interesting looking NES games in my view. So I'm really excited to have this. Again, another like top-down isometric view, and you're kind of dodging 3D environments and dropping bombs, and it's really dope. Next one is actually the first NES game that I ever got in my collection. It's Clash at Demonhead. I only really got it at the time because of the fact that they had so few NES games of interest to me when I first bought my NES. And I think I bought a regular NES at the time, and it broke shortly after, and then that's when I ended up with a top loader. They really hooked me up at my local game store, so shout out to them. But yeah, they had Clash at Demonhead, and I think I got like Spelunker with it or something like that too. Really dope game. So if you look, you got Vic Tokai, I believe, as a developer. Another, again, action platformer. I get a lot of vibes of like, let me think. It's similar to Kid Dracula, if you will. Like you kind of have like a small sprite that's like shooting out like some kind of projectile, and you're kind of just firing at enemies, jumping, navigating, avoiding gaps and stuff like that. So it's pretty much your run-of-the-mill action platformer. A lot of action platformers here. The absolute classic Trade West game, Double Dragon. Love this game. So if you don't know, like 2-player beat 'em up. Cool thing is a twist at the end where they turn on you. But yeah, fantastic beat 'em up game if you like that. Not the best on the console, but really solid nonetheless. One of my favorite puzzle games of all time, Dr. Mario. Gotta know about Mario, of course. And, oh, I'm sorry. If I'm showing you the games and it's flipped, I'm sorry. I'm using my inside camera, so I apologize for that if all the stickers are flipped. But yeah, Dr. Mario. Love this game. And it still really holds up well to this day. There was actually just, an iPhone version of the game that they dropped. Some kind of variation on it. But, yeah, man. Nothing bad about this game. It's pretty much kind of like in the vibe of like a Tetris or a Puyo Puyo, in the way that no matter how many years pass, that kind of gameplay loop is just fantastic and aged incredibly well. We got Excite Bike here, classic game, man. Really enjoy this. Kind of on the bike, you know, managing your speed, your gas levels, going up hills and trying to improve your times pretty much. Okay, another one of my favorite NES games is Gradius or Gradius, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. Konami game, kind of like a space shooter. Really like it. I kind of like all kind of games like this. I'm not very good at them, but I really, really enjoy them. That's why, like, I've been playing a game recently by Lilymo Games called Habroxia, which definitely takes a lot of cues from this game. But man, you can't go wrong with Gradius. Brutally difficult, but really good. We got Mega Man 2 here, absolute classic. I actually have Mega Man 3 as well. These are the only two I can get, and they're the only ones that I think are like kind of priced reasonably. Mega Man 3 is my favorite, but I really, really do like Mega Man 2 as well. Absolute classics. Shout out to Capcom on these. Then we have Metal Gear by Ultra. Yeah, man, I mean, we've seen where this franchise has gone since this title. This is obviously the first one. But since then, you know, we've gone to Metal Gear 2, Snake's Revenge or something like that. I know there's the Solid series that goes on to this day, actually, with Survive and stuff like that. So I really, really enjoy this game. I'm like terrible at it. I cannot get even remotely close to beating it. Just the way you kind of have to like play with the UI and that kind of primitive setup that they have there. It still uses like stealth mechanics, but again, it's top down, similar to the original Metal Gear style, just with the NES view. Alright, next one, Ninja Gaiden 2. Now, I hate that I do not have Ninja Gaiden 1. It drives me nuts. I need to, as soon as this quarantine's up, and if I find it for a good price, I'm picking it up 100%. It's one of the first games I'm getting for. But yeah, Ninja Gaiden 2, man. Brutal, brutal game. Shout out to Tecmo. They got this done. Love that game. We're actually making better time than I thought we were gonna. Alright, so we have Metroid on the NES. The original Metroid, one of my favorite. This is one of the titles that I think like the Super Nintendo version is a lot better than the original version. But you gotta give it a lot of credit for the stuff they were doing there. Just playing around, like, there's so few games like this. The explorability, the different items, the pixel art's pretty cool. It's fun. It's a little slow if you are used to the newer ones, especially like if you're coming off of like the 2 remake on 3DS or like Metroid Fusion or Zero Mission or something like that. This one's gonna feel a lot slower, but I think it's really, really solid. Next one, a classic, Paperboy. Got this on Video Games Monthly as well. Classic game, you're on your bike, you're trying to deliver newspapers, there's lots of obstacles in the streets, and you're trying to time your throws to get the newspaper onto the neighbors' houses, you know, aligned properly. Difficult game, but really, really fun gameplay loop. I remember I actually had a version of this game, I think on like Game Boy or something like that, and I would play it as a kid, and I was like obsessed with it. And it's funny that like I'll play it now and I get no further. I have not gotten any better. Okay, so we got Punch-Out here. Now, this is not the Mike Tyson's version. This is just the regular Punch-Out. If I can find Mike Tyson's Punch-Out priced properly, again, I'll jump on it. But yeah, man, Punch-Out, really, really fun gameplay loop. One of my favorite. I like Super Punch-Out as well, but the original I think is just solid as hell. Amazing character animations on that. I just love the art of this game. And if you don't know how the gameplay is, you're a boxer who now is known as Little Mac. I don't know if he's named that in the original game. He might be. But yeah, Little Mac, you know him from Smash. And yeah, you're boxing, you're dodging your opponent's punches, and you're timing your punches, and you're managing your stamina gauge. So it's pretty really dope game. Next up, we got Rampage. I actually got this in Rhode Island on a vacation once, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Data East game. You're a giant animal or a giant kind of monster thing, and you're destroying the city, and you're trying to level all the buildings while simultaneously managing enemies that are attacking you, different like soldiers and stuff like that. So pretty fun game. Funny thing is, every time I see this now, like my mind immediately goes to like that Rock movie that came out like a year or two ago. I'm like, why'd they do that? I don't know. But yeah, Rampage, classic. I had a Game Boy Color version of it, or maybe it was a sequel or something like that when I was growing up, and really enjoyed. A game that I actually didn't know, this is one of the ones that are the newer ones to me, which was Skate or Die. It's an Ultra game. Really dope skate game. I had no clue there were skate games going back to the NES, and so I believe I maybe got this in Video Games Monthly, maybe picked this up at a game store. I can't remember. I buy so many games in fast succession for different consoles that it's like hard to manage exactly where I got them if it's not like a super memorable memory. But yeah, man, Skate or Die, amazing pixel art. And again, you're gonna hear me gush over the art of a lot of these games. Sorry if I sound repetitive, but I mean, again, I just love the look of this game. Excellent music, pretty fun gameplay loop. I wouldn't say it's held up the best, but I think there's a lot to be liked about that game. Okay, another one of the first games I ever got on the console, and it's Spelunker. Now, this is a game where you kind of have your main character and you're trying to navigate caverns and managing not falling off of the ladders, avoiding enemies, digging, and you're trying to get deeper and deeper. So yeah, Spelunker, classic game. Not one I return to that often, but nice to have in the collection. Okay, another one of my top 5 favorite NES games, it's Strider. Got a little slipcover here. Actually got this at a retro game convention last year, I believe. And the funny thing is, I remember I walked into that convention, there's like 2 games that I wanted. I was like, I want a copy of Shinobi 1. Well, I wanted any of the Shinobis, but I think maybe I had like 3 at the time. 2 wasn't really resurfacing, and sometimes when they sell 2 at cons, they're a little bit more expensive. So I wanted, Shinobi 1, and I wanted Strider, and I walked out with both, and I was so excited to get this. So fantastic game. If you don't know much about it, it's like kind of a fast-paced action game in the vein of a Ninja Gaiden, but it definitely has its own feel. It has like a wider reach with the sword mechanics. Amazing like parallax scrolling and different kind of looks on it. Got like the rain animations at the beginning of the game. Fantastic. All right, right here we have an absolute classic, Mario. Of course, I have all 3. We'll get to those. Mario 1 though, one of the best selling consoles or games on the console. I know like 3 cleared like 18 millions or like 10 millions or something like that. So they're all like top sellers on the console. This did get bundled in with the original NES too, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, man, classic game. That soundtrack, you can't get better than that. Now we have Mario 2. Now this is one that a lot of people have an affinity for. It's not really my cup of tea. Now for y'all that don't know, the American Mario 2 is actually a reskin, I believe, of the Japanese game Doki Doki Panic. And then there was the actual Mario 2 that they didn't release in the United States because they felt like it was too difficult. That was re-released eventually in the United States as the Lost Levels. So this is the American 2, the Doki Doki Panic. It has like a different gameplay style, like you're picking up and throwing things. They're very different than the previous entry and the one that came subsequently after. Pretty dope art style, I'll give them that. I do really like the look of this game and the selectable characters and stuff like that. There's like really interesting stuff. Out of the original trilogy, it's probably the one that I play the least. I beat it maybe like twice in my life. I haven't played it too many times. Don't love it, but got a lot of respect for it. So Mario 2. And then the best NES game in my view is Super Mario Bros. 3. Love this game. Love this game. Perfect platformers, held up brilliantly. Of course, you have that debate that me and Steve specifically always have, which is Super Mario Bros. 3 versus Super Mario World, which one's better. I've always erred on the side of Mario Bros. 3. That's my personal favorite, but I 100% understand why some people would go for World. But yeah, man, love this game. If you don't know, similar to the previous Mario entries, platformer, you're trying to make it from one side to the other side using different items and stuff like that and upgrades and trying to get the score up and getting coins and stuff like that. Another game, classic, Tetris. Can't really explain Tetris for y'all that don't know. If you don't know, look it up. Excellent puzzle game. You're fitting pieces together, trying to clear lines. Personally, I prefer playing it on the Game Boy, but I love the NES version too, and I had to pick that up. They had it pretty cheap. It's really inexpensive to find. To people who are used to some of the newer titles, like I wouldn't suggest you go from like Tetris Effect to this. It's much slower. You're not subbing out pieces. It's a whole different game. The meta game is very different, and it's challenging in a kind of a different way than the newer ones are. But speed is the main issue of what like causes the main challenge, just like to this day. So it still stands the test of time. But yeah, Tetris. Wow, we're making good time. This went way shorter than I was, so good thing I'll be able to pump these out a little bit faster than I thought, because I was like, oh man, if this comes out to like an hour, like a podcast, it's gonna be way harder to film. But yeah, we're a little under 20 minutes, not bad. Okay, so we got TMNT now, not to be mistaken with the arcade like beat 'em up game, which is actually something that I really want. If I could find that for a good price, I'll buy it. And that's the thing is, when it comes to collecting, for me, it's always like the long game kind of thing. So like, I'll pick up a game as it pops up, and I'm happy about it. And then if something pops up and I really want it, but the price isn't right, I'll be like, all right, I'll go back to it. Unless it's like super rare, but again, most of the super rare NES games are like already out of my price range. I'm not going to buy like a little Samson or anything like that. So yeah, TMNT popped up. I want the arcade version. This is an interesting version. So you kind of have like a top-down map that you go from one point to another, and you're kind of navigating through that, and then it actually changes to a 2D platformer where you're kind of jumping over gaps and fighting enemies, and it's a really interesting game. It's a little clunky if you're not used to it. It's kind of tough to play. It takes some time to really get used to, but after a while playing, because again, the first time I played, I was like, absolutely not. And I played a couple more times. I got a little bit better. I learned exactly how like it is to jump and clear gaps, and like what the limitations of characters are and what each character can do. And oh, I'm using Donatello here. He's good because he's got the reach and stuff like that. And kind of playing the little differences like that, I really ended up liking it quite a bit. But I understand why some people like would not like it. Okay, so we have WWF WrestleMania. This is one of the early games I got on my NES collection too. Some of these I just got because I wanted NES games and they had them available. Wrestling game, for y'all that don't know, don't really like it that much. It's really tough. Not really into the old wrestling games. I'm kind of like PS1 and up for me personally. I don't know. I can play N64 too. N64, PS1 and up. For wrestling games for me personally, but this one's pretty fun. Of course, you got Hulk Hogan there on the cover, iconic cover. But yeah, Acclaim game, not really my cup of tea, but I'm glad to have it in the collection. Coming down on the last two here, we have the Legend of Zelda Gold Cart, of course. Glad to have this. I was super excited to add this collection. I got a little bit of sticker damage there, but one day I'm gonna figure out something. I just don't want to like use whatever I have at home and risk damaging the gold like finish on this cart, because I'm pretty sure it's a paint. But yeah, man, Legend of Zelda, classic game. Franchise still going to this day. Top-down game. Tough, a little bit obtuse. I can beat it with a guide, but it's not something I have like familiarity with it enough to be able to just navigate through those maps on my own without a guide. But man, really holds up well for what they were trying to do there. Really, it's technically, yeah, like an open world game on the NES, and there's not too many of those, so you got to give them credit. They made an excellent game that kind of spawned a franchise that is revolutionary to gaming. And then we have kind of like the ugly stepchild of the Zelda series that a lot of people like to bash. It's Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link. I kind of have like mixed feelings on this game. Like sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. It's a weird game. You kind of have like an overworld map type situation that's similar to something you'd see in like maybe the original Final Fantasies, for example. And then it turns into a 2D action type game, and it's very different. It has like way more RPG mechanics than the original one. So it's an obtuse game. It's not. I kind of treat it like the same way I treat Castlevania 2, where it's like it's inferior to the games before and after it, but I think they were taking risks there and trying to reinvent the franchise really early on that I think it deserves a lot of credit. So yeah, that's my personal NES collection. Actually, you know what? I got 4 NES titles here that Steve has. Let me go through these. So the first one we have is Goonies 2. These are Steve's games. Fun action platformer, I guess not based on the movie because there's only a Goonies 1 if I'm mistaken. But yeah, fun Konami game. I enjoy it quite a bit. We have Winter's Game, one of the many sports titles on the NES. Pretty fun. Like you got like different Olympic style like sports games for the most part. You got Track and Field, another Konami sports game, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Every time I see the gray label, I'm like, yeah, that's usually a Konami game. Pretty fun Olympic style games, but I feel like these are kind of like two sides of the same coin. So you got like the winter version, and this is like more like summer Olympics style stuff. And Track and Field, yeah, you're running and you're tapping the button and you're jumping and you're doing all these different activities and games. It's okay. And then we have Ice Hockey, a game that a lot of people like for like hockey sims or hockey arcade games on the NES. Again, I prefer Blades of Steel personally, the Konami version. But yeah, Nintendo developed Ice Hockey, one of the few sports titles that they personally released kind of like their line along with like baseball and football and stuff like that. Alright guys, so that was the video. Again, we made good time. It wasn't super long. Again, I'll include timestamps below of the different sections you can skip to in the video. That's my NES collection. If you enjoyed the video, I can do these every week for each part of my collection. Next up, I'll do like Super Nintendo, then I'll do like Genesis, and we'll go through each one from there. I can go probably up to the N64 probably, because beyond that, I don't have like a ton of games worth showing. Like I have a lot of GameCube games, but a lot of the like critical ones that I would want to show off, I don't have. So I think like the N64 would be a good cutoff. If you guys are interested, let me know in the comment section below, and I can have videos like this out for you guys weekly as like a cool kind of like supplementary piece of content for the podcast. And again, hope you guys enjoyed. Till next time, this was Jabril from Neo Vintage Gaming. Bye.